All right, a full guide to read more books and actually love the process, coming from someone who has hated reading for his whole life up until last year. So that's 17 years of hating reading since I came out of the womb of my mother. And today I'm going to be manipulating you into thinking I'm qualified to talk about this with this shelf behind me to make you think that I actually read. Seriously speaking though, I've been reading consistently for almost a year now, and this video is for anyone who wants to get into reading, or they've already gotten into it but they want to be more consistent, read more books, or if you think that reading isn't for you at all because you've successfully convinced yourself that you are a visual learner. No, you are not. Stop lying to yourself. It is just that you haven't developed the skill yet, and your attention span has been lowered so much just because of how life is nowadays. I don't need to explain. So hopefully this video helps. And this is probably the most important one. If you were to take one and leave the rest, then take this tip right here. And that is asking yourself, why are you reading? The moment you answer this question, you have fixed your problem on the long term when it comes to reading. If you were to think about yourself without answering this question, you would be reading for the sake of reading, just to cross out a book from a list, to add another book on your Goodreads account. If you're doing that, then it's a 99% chance that your quality of reading is extremely low. You're barely gaining as much as you can or understanding as much as you can. You're the same person before and after reading the book. You've simply gained nothing, and I don't have to explain why that's a bad thing. Well, why is it that you should read? Well, that question in itself deserves its whole separate video, but generally everyone will have their own personalized, individualized, subjective reason for why they read. But I do have a list of very general points which will apply to everyone, no matter what your goals are. All right, so let's just go through the list quickly so we can move on to the next tips. First is that it gives you access to the best sources of information in the world when it comes to all fields and all topics. Secondly is that reading offers an extremely effective way at absorbing information, especially when you can actually read at your own pace. And you can compare this to watching a lecture and sitting back. You're probably not gonna gain as much just listening until you sit down, take notes, highlight, reread, read texts. Thirdly is that the more you read, the more you are building that skill which you will use in school, university, in work, and just in life in general. Fourth is that it offers an extremely healthy way of consuming entertainment, and this is very obvious when you compare it to scrolling on social media or binge watching shows, which is gonna damage your attention span, and it's just gonna be so stimulating to the point where when you go do something else like studying or something which just requires you to sit down and focus, you're gonna really, really find it difficult. And this is actually the tip which is the first thing that made me start reading. You see, the problem is school gave me an extremely bad impression of books, whether it's because of their book selections or because even if the books are good and they're classics, that they have been explained in an extremely boring and just like unapproachable way. So I never actually read a book completely in school. I would just read summaries or watch video summaries and go by the test and do whatever I can, and in the end I did do well, but I never read the book in the end. And that's why I'm telling you guys to explore diversity. When I say diversity, I mean different genres, different categories of books, the different languages which you can read in. The first book which I ever read, which was a year ago, was a book called Why We Sleep, which I saw recommended in a video. And if you know me from past videos, one of my passions in life is biology and anatomy and studying how the body works and diseases. And this book was perfectly in that field. It was talking about how the body needs sleep, how we can improve sleep, everything it does to the body. So I was finally interested in something, and even though I read in a very slow pace compared to the average reader, I finally showed up to the reading. I'm finally reading consistently, even if it's little, and I finished the book in the end. And I started to move on to other books which I liked that were in a similar category. And in that same way, if you are a viewer coming from my other videos, you will know that 99% of my videos are based on Islam. And I was like, if I'm making this channel, I need to be more knowledgeable on what I'm talking about. So that gave me this motivation and purpose, like I mentioned in my first tip, to actually pick up these Islamic books. And these are just some of them, which you can see behind me. And now I'm reading with purpose and I'm enjoying it, and there's a clear objective and I can actually be consistent with it. Third tip is to treat reading like a discipline. Treat it like an exercise. So if we go back to the gym example, if you ask anyone who goes to the gym or just who works on anything in life, there are times where you are extremely motivated and there are times where you are, the exact opposite. And when you're extremely motivated, that's amazing. If you're enjoying reading, then use that enjoyment to fuel you reading more. But there are going to be times where you hit like a reading slump or like a plateau, and I really think that in these times, you should also continue reading. Push it in a sense as if you are doing exercise. If you are used to reading 30 pages a day, don't worry, just make it 10 pages a day for today. But as long as you are continuing that habit, you're continuing that discipline of yours to actually prove to yourself that, sometimes you may not feel it, but you will still do it. I feel like that is a great thing to do. If you can see it that way as a discipline, it's going to be extremely useful, not necessarily when you are reading stories or things solely for enjoyment and entertainment, but in a context where you are studying or, doing something where you are acquiring information through books. It is in that context where treating it like a discipline is going to help you a lot. My fourth and final major tip is try to make reading one of your main ways of entertainment when you're at home or wherever you are. So there are two ideas to this. The first idea is that even when you are reading something which is purely for enjoyment and entertainment, you are still working on that skill of reading and you are experiencing entertainment in a way that is not so stimulating like when you're scrolling through social media. Books will still give you dopamine, but you cannot compare it to, scrolling on autopilot or binge watching a show. So again, it does work on that skill of reading and being able to focus on a black and white page with just words. And speaking about myself, over 75% of the reading I do is to be more knowledgeable on my religion. And sometimes when I'm like reading 3 of these books at once, I slow down and it gets to the point where I could be burnt out for, a period of time. So the idea is I have taken a novel, and with this novel I can switch back and forth when I feel like I'm not in the mood for something academic and informative. I will move to the novel where I'm still reading, but it's something more enjoyable, characters and stories which I can follow along. And now honestly, my science related books, my Islam related books have been a big source of entertainment for me while I'm simultaneously gaining knowledge. And you want to reach this point where if I said the internet router was going to be cut off for let's say 6 hours, that you would be able to pick up a book instead of, watching YouTube or whatever, and you would still be able to go through that time while reading and actually enjoying it. And if you were to think of yourself locked up in a room with absolutely nothing, like solitary confinement, and I kept you in there for a day, and then the next day I gave you a book, imagine how excited you would be. It would feel like I have given you, a room filled with colors and just amazing stuff, all in that one book which you have been avoiding for so long. One more quick tip I'd like to give is to focus on time and not the number of pages. So something I did when I first started is that I gave myself a minimum, minimum read 5 pages a day. But the problem with that is that the time you would read a certain book is not the same as another. And if you see these books behind me, these Arabic books, to read 10 pages of these and to actually understand them, it would take me around 1 hour to 1 hour and 30 minutes compared to, a novel where you're just reading about the stories of some characters. It's simply not the same. So that's why I would say focus on the time of reading and not the pages. If you, for example, set up a 1 hour timer and the timer is up and you want to continue, then that's amazing, keep going. But in terms of setting yourself a minimum per day, to kind of build a habit and not go below that minimum, I would say focus on time and not the pages. Let's say start with 15 minutes. Currently, I do 45 minutes a day. And just find where it is that you are at. To use myself as an example, as you can see, we have some diversity here. We have some Islamic books in both English and Arabic. We have some self-help books. We have some science books from my childhood, which I haven't touched in a long time. And when I want something to follow in terms of like story and events, I have this novel I'm currently reading called Musashi. Apparently he is the greatest samurai in Japan, and it's pretty entertaining. It's just something nice to go back and forth between when I do my Islamic studies and some history. So as you can see, there's a nice variety of topics which I love. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next one.